it was David Helwig at CHLO and then later with CKSL, and there was another guy, Tim French, at CHLO at the time. But David Helwig's here tonight. And you know, we keep talking about open government and governments being accountable. David Helwig never did more than to promote open government in the city of St. Thomas. I became mayor in 1991, and we had a very open policy about what we did. David's still in the business, in the media business today, running an online newspaper in Sault Ste. Marie, Sioux Today. David's here tonight. David, come on up, and you've got a kind of a bit of a history with the radio station. I just wanted to get a couple comments from you. And if anybody doesn't like this, if you don't like it, you can
not listen.
I have to tell you, Steve, that I was part of the team in the about 1979, 1980 at CHLO that was so renowned for broadcast excellence that we inspired John L. Moore to sell the station.
Oh, shame.
Anyway, I have to say that one thing that I really appreciated in a day that there's so much corporate ownership of broadcasting, and things are so set in stone as to what music you will play and what you will say, that this was an extraordinary place for a young person to begin a career, that we had extraordinary freedom. For me, CHLO was a laboratory. It was a place to learn, and the freedom that I got there to make a whole lot of mistakes turned out to be extraordinarily useful to me later in life. And the city, St. Thomas, I'm always confusing St. Thomas with Sault Ste. Marie, where I am now, but St. Thomas really was a community that was extraordinarily good to me, and I'm eternally grateful to all of you for that.
Thanks, David. Well, Steve Matthews, come on, Warren Beck, come on in. Oh, here, I think we've got enough cords. So this is Warren Beck. Okay, cool. Yeah, you got enough there, Warren. I think you're all right.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, I went to CHLO in 1949, and it really isn't important what I did there, but it's interesting how I got my job. I was a kid in high school. I used to stand by the window and watch the DJs and the announcers and the operators roll the records and talk. And one day, one of the announcers came out and said, "You've been here for about 6 months. Why don't you come in and see what the business is all about?" And the announcer was Joe Van Poppel. And I don't think there's anyone in this room who remembers who Joe Van Poppel is. I remember. Joe Van Poppel was in the Armed Forces during the war, went to Lorne Green Radio School, which probably nobody knows about, and got a job in St. Thomas, and came to St. Thomas. By the way, I was born in St. Thomas, raised in St. Thomas, and educated in St. Thomas. So I know a little bit about St. Thomas in my early years. Anyways, Joe invited me in, and I sat beside the operator, and he was spinning these records, and I really wasn't interested in broadcasting on the air. And I became fascinated by spinning records and producing themes and that kind of thing. So I was there for a long time. Bill On, who was a chief engineer, came up to me one day and said, "We have an opening, are you interested in the job?" I took it right away, and I quit school, which didn't go over very well at home. Anyways, I went there, and I gotta tell you how much I earned, because it blows me away today. I earned $25 a week. And I stayed there from Lyle, 55? Yeah. 55? Until 85. Became news director and taught at Mohawk College, journalism, television, and radio, and started my own company, and I'm still a news director at Bradford. I'm under contract. But anyways, the interesting thing about what I did at CHLO was we at our place, there's guys like Bill Moyer and Don Lumley, Mary Snell, who worked in traffic, Doug Bates, I think is retired now from Fanshawe College, I think he taught there. His brother Nick Donnie, I think he went to CTV later on. A lot of the people coming out of our CHLO at that time, exclusive of me, went to greater things. They really did. CHLO seemed to be a place where people could learn the business and really specialize in what they wanted to do. I can name Pete Dickens as an example. Went to CFRB in Toronto. Went to Chum, went to Toronto. Guys like that, and they all started in CHLO in St. Thomas. And I think that's really a tribute to the radio station and the people that work there. I just want to clear a couple of things that I heard tonight. Ernie Warwick, who started the station, was a wheat farmer out of Blenheim. And he was the first Canadian farmer to sell wheat to Russia. And you go back to the 50s, that was almost like declaring war between, communism and democratic type of government. And another thing that a lot of people don't remember or know of, anybody remember Paul Soles? A very talented Stratford actor. And does anybody remember Pat Murray? Pat Murray.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Pat Murray and Paul Soles, when CHLO went on the air before my time, because I was still a kid looking in the window, they were hired by, I assume, Ernie Warwick or Jack Peterson to co-host the early morning show.
Marmalade matinee.
And it was, I don't know what time, 6 to 9 or something like that. They co-hosted that show. It was a publicity stunt or promotion stunt to attract people to our radio station because we were a brand new radio station. And nobody remembers that. And I bumped into Paul Soles about 3 or 4 years ago in Toronto when he was performing. And he remembered that time. Pat Murray has since passed away. He went to CTV or CFTO, I think it was, in '63. But these guys really promoted the radio station and got us on the air to make people listen to us. And guys like Lyle and I, if we ever told all the stories that we participated in, we'd probably be still in jail. Especially Lyle. I'd probably be on a parole now. Anyways, I'm really pleased that I got here tonight because at CHLO in Hamilton, which I was there about 30 years, I've organized a reunion committee. And we have 2 get-togethers a year. And we have about, the last one we had was back, I think, in September or October last year. We had 145 people there. And we had a hell of a time. We all reminisce and we talk about all the good times we had. And a couple of people have said to me, very good friends of mine, said to me, why don't you write a book about all your experiences at CHLO? I said, well, I gotta wait for about 100 people to die before there's a lawsuit. So I'm not gonna write a book, but I just thought you'd like to know. Thanks very much.
But you don't need to write that book. You can at least start talking into your iPhone or your iPad and get those recollections preserved forever and ever. And then after you're dead, who gives a shit?
I'm not saying
it doesn't matter, but you've got to capture it. Because I think every one of us in this room, we can think, why didn't I talk to my grandma and get those photos named on the back of the photographs of what I should have done? And why didn't I talk to so-and-so? Well, you know what? Just do it, and don't worry about it. You've got to keep those recollections alive for future generations. Steve Matthews, another connection to the radio station.
Hello, I am Steve Matthews. I'm a St. Thomas boy. I'm a little younger than some of the lads that are speaking before me. But that's what I wanted to talk about, and that is that the impact of this radio station how special it is and how many times I've thought of that over the years, growing up in the 60s here in St. Thomas, and literally growing up with the radio sitting on my chest. I was a listener, and I used to lay in bed, I had the radio on my chest, and I would listen to the DJs and the music, and I don't think I realized until later how special it was, but this, as David Helwig just said, was a laboratory. We didn't follow a pattern here. There was no consultants, there was no playlists. There was Tom Lodge and Bobby Steele and J. Robert Wood, who were pretty much inventing it as they went through it. And I'm at the other end on Fairview Avenue here at St. Thomas in my bedroom downstairs, listening to all of that. And you really screwed me up, people. Especially you, Bobby. Actually, I'll tell you a little story about Bobby. I was actually a London Free Press delivery boy, so I was delivering papers at 6 o'clock in the morning on Yonge Street, where Wayne Meunier, aka Bobby Steele, lived. And he drove this little Morris Mini Minor thing. So I would deliver papers at 6 o'clock in the morning, in the quiet of the morning, and I would see Bobby's little red Mini sitting out there. And I could tell, and I was the only one that knew this, I could tell what Bobby did the night before just by the way it was parked.
Did it smell too?
Smoke coming out of it. But I laid there on my bed and listened to things like Eric Clapton's Layla, one of the longest songs ever. I could remember thinking, is this song ever going to end? Because most songs were about 3 or 4 minutes long, and Layla was about 7 minutes long. But also some very groundbreaking underground music, which would sort of pave the way to underground FM in the 70s. Do you remember Bubble Puppy? Hot Gas and Sassafras. Or a band called The Boys from Detroit who did a song called Timothy, and the lyric line was about a miner trapped in the bottom of a mine and his buddies ate him.
Yes.
And then there was Cream and all of that other great rock. And to show how political they could get, and this was probably Tom Lodge's influence, playing McCartney's Give Ireland Back to the Irish. So look what you did to me. And then later on, I grew up, because it's kind of weird to be sitting here with Bobby tonight, Wayne Meunier, because he was like my hero when I was a kid. But he was older, and he didn't pay attention to a little guy like Steve Matthews. But here we are, and later on, I was so inspired by what I heard here in St. Thomas that I dedicated my life to radio. And I eventually ended up working in radio, mostly in London and other places. But I also, for a brief period, worked here in St. Thomas at CHLO when they were 1570, when Vern Ferber owned it. And there was a job that came up. I was doing weekends. The tall one, he hired me. Beck hired me. And so I was doing weekends, and Doug Hines was retiring. So there was a news position opening up. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to go for it. You know, so I made a tape, and I made an appointment with Vern Ferber. And I went in, and I played him the tape. And he didn't like the way I said news. He said, it's news. And he didn't really like the tape and all that, but he was kind of interested in me. He said, so where are you working now, Steve? I said, here. Anyway, I went off to a broadcasting career that lasted 18 years after that. Did news in London mostly, and then later after that I ended up being in public relations for an aid agency and worked all around the world and ended up on CNN, BBC, and all of that. But it all started here in St. Thomas, Ontario, where Steve Moore did my first audition, I guess, and didn't hire me. That's how bad I was. But I remember his advice to me was to go home and read the newspaper out loud, and boy did I. For weeks on end, drove my mother crazy. It's very special to be here tonight. CHLO was a fantastic station. The influence that it had on people, us listeners, the music that it played, the personalities. I feel very honored to be in this room tonight.
your mom was one of the greatest teachers ever, Arthur Bowden.
Thank you.
Oh, Doreen Matthews, the best. And your dad's a lot of fun too. Nobody like Jimmy Matthews. We're gonna, Chuck's gonna put on a couple other things just to listen to. I'd like to just continue on because, you know, these recollections, and I hope you're enjoying it. You know, it's a heck of a lot better than sitting in a bar, listening to music, rock and roll, boom, 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 that you don't care too less about. But Chuck's gonna put a couple other things on, but I've got to do something for Bill Viggers. He just called from British Columbia. So this is for Bill Viggers. And I'm not using salt, and I'm not using the lemon, and I hate tequila with a passion because it's tequila. But this is for Bill Viggers.
Hammersley's got one too.
You got one too?
He said two.
He said two.
Yeah.
So Bill Viggers sent one for Steve Peters, one for Bob Hammersley. We both had to drink these things, and we're both gonna. Warmed up, that gives you a good radio voice, ladies and gentlemen. And let's continue to rock and roll here in downtown St. Thomas tonight. So anyway, Chuck's going to put a couple other things on, and I really love the opportunity. If there's some other people as respectful as you have been this evening and sit here and respectful of one another speaking, that would be really wonderful. So Chuck's going to put a few more things on, and we'll come back and think about it if you got some things, because Diane Nickson is recording this for posterity, and thanks Diane for doing that. Karen McDade has been taking still photos, so we'll have those and we'll post those to the site. But this is a great night that we're going to keep a lot of memories alive. So take a pee break, food break, whatever. Best Pizza's right next door, Capri, 633-9260. And we'll come back at you in a few minutes. Here, Chuck.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, who would like to hear some old CHLO clips? All right, we got some stuff that goes all the way back to 1964. We've got Paul Steve, we've got, of course, Bobby Steele here, J. Robert Wood, and
my phone,
Rich
and
Grevin.
now I'm on the Sandy's phone.
1570. Rich Grevin was the first guy to go on the air.
Sandy grabbed her laptop but didn't take all the stuff off of it from church, so it's like,
This
yeah.
is a bit of Paul Steve from 1964. This is 51 years ago.
Let's face facts. He's grumpy, stingy, and he plays a rotten violin.
Yeah, who's perfect this morning? You seem to not.
Dave Mickey actually had a hit record. This was one of two of them.
Oh dear, Mr. DJ, what a touching song. It's such a pretty song, I think I'm going to cry. So you're going to be very mighty. I'll be back. In a PT 109, the wartime adventure of John F. Kennedy meets the Captain of the Eater in St. Thomas tonight.
That's amazing. I like that, eh? That's amazing. That's what I feel like down there? Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Okay, you'll close it up with your good radio voice in some way, in shape, or form.
Hi, Daddy-o.
Hi, babe.
You want your hat back?
We're going to have a full scale review. So let me jump in and then... Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can I get your attention, please? Okay, quiet, order. I'm going to evict you if you don't. So we're going to wrap things down. Listen, thanks very much. Thanks to my great friends at the Midtown, the Barber family, and for everything they've done to host us tonight. Thank you all for coming, whether you came from a short distance away or a far distance away. Thanks for coming. We've got some other plans. Warren's going to fill you in a little bit as we wrap up, but just before we close out, is there anybody that's got some sort of connection, fan, listener, staffer, that has some last minute recollections of CHLO? Oh, one more, okay.
I know that Wayne's gone now, but this was a funny one. I used to bug him on the phone all the time. I used to call CHLO 6330711, I think was the number. Or it's 4380711 in London, because it was long distance between London and St. Thomas back in the 70s and the 60s. And the switch to 1570 was coming. I knew it was happening by about early 69, late 68. I think the word got out that was going to happen when Rogers wanted to put CFTR on there on 680 in Toronto. So I called up Wayne one day and I said, or Bobby Steele rather, and I said, Bobby, so tell me about the switch to 1570. And he says, yeah, what they're going to do is they're going to go up one frequency every day. So it'll be 690, 700, 710, 720. And I said, oh, okay. He says, you just wait till they get to 980. Anyway, that was Bobby Steele's humor. But a recollection of CHLO amongst many others, and I'll turn it back to Steve.
Thanks. Phil!
Alright,
Jump in.
I'm giving you this hat for the museum.
Well, like I said earlier, one of the things tonight is we're going to make sure we create an archives of CHLO permanently. Come on, Phil. Come on, you gotta stand over here and get a photo taken.
Sure, okay. Alright.
Wait, maybe your head might show off too much light, so you might need to wear it. No, thanks, Phil, because that's part of tonight. We're gonna make sure we create a permanent archive of the records contained tonight. And again, thanks to Diane and Karen. Anyone else? Last recollections. Last call. Last call. Oh, Don Cosens is coming back.
No,
You
Steve.
can't resist. You can't resist.
Thanks, Steve. Well, this is just a short one, but I really regret that Jimmy Hesseltine is not here tonight.
All right.
Jimmy was a real curmudgeon, but boy, he had a lot of good stories.
All right.
He was a wonderful guy, and I'm just too he just died last year. I'm sorry he's not here. Another recollection, Pat Murray started the day they started the radio station here. Yeah, I think he was still going to the high school at that time. And he had the after-school deal at the Columbia Theater. He was a wonderful personality guy, just super. And I also remember they had a Saturday night dance party. And I remember I wouldn't miss that for anything. I think it started at 8 and went till midnight or 1 o'clock. And you phoned in a request. And it was just fantastic. And I remember I had to have my bath on Saturday night, whether I needed it or not. And Dad said, are you going to have that bath? I said, he wanted to get in too. So I said, well, I've got to listen to the radio. So he hooked up a radio in the bathroom. But I couldn't get near it because I was electrocuted myself. But I remember sitting in the bathtub listening to You Belong to Me. I remember that just so well. God, what the memories you got, eh?
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, listen, that's what it's all about. Last call, anybody? Any recollections?
Don't forget the hat.
Oh, Sally Nickson.
Betty Beckley used to be the little
Oh,
girl
here,
with
come on.
Santa Claus.
Come on, jump in, sing it.
Does anybody?
Remind us.
Does anybody remember that?
I don't know, tell them. You gotta hold the microphone.
Does anyone remember Betty Beckley? She used to be the little girl that Santa Claus talked to at Christmas. Yeah.
Oh, there you when was that? How old were you? Well, you might give away your age, but don't worry about it. Who cares? Oh, Don Mathers is gonna jump in quick. Come on.
And
Okay, Don Mathers, you're getting the last call.
Thanks, Steve. You know, I just found out tonight that CHLO was started in 1948, and I was started in 1948 because that was the year of my birth. So I feel a kinship to CHLO. Now, when I was about 5 years old, my mother took me up to Mrs. Scarlett's Sunshine Hour. And she said, I've got one that can sing. And she sent me in and I sang a song while she went and shopped or something. and came back and picked me up after. I asked these boys here, like Bill and the guys, if they knew about Mrs. Scarlett's Sunshine Hour, and they didn't. They didn't know anything about it, and I'm thinking, well, maybe my memory isn't quite as accurate as I thought it was, but it doesn't matter. I was still there during that time. Anyway, in 1970, when CHLO changed from 680 to 1570, I was working in London with Mike Mulhern, and I remember the moment that changed. And I thought, this is great, because now this Chicago station that's been whining and crying the blues for years because CHLO gets skipped down to Chicago and blows them right out of the ground, now has 680 as their own call sign. CHLO now has 1570, which is better, I guess, for them. But the fact is that they got a bigger, they were given a bunch of money, and they bought these towers that we see down on the highest point of Elgin County, down here by the drag strip. And that increased their output from 5,000 kilowatts or 5,000 watts to 50,000 watts, I believe, wasn't it? No.
1,000 to 10,000.
1,000 to 10,000.
Doesn't matter.
It's okay. They were
huge.
That's right.
Jumbo like
they were jumbo. They were jumbo like that. That's right. Exactly. And I thought that can't be bad. That cannot be bad for a radio station like St. Thomas to go to 10,000 watts. So that's where they were in 1970 when they changed. I guess they changed the transformer at that time, did they not? They produced the new 10,000 watts with 1570 at that moment.
It was a brand new RCA transmitter we gave it.
Yeah.
And it's had a different transmitter site. It had 4 towers,
Yeah.
688 towers, and 1570.
Okay. At any rate, they changed it all, and that's what we're listening to, or that's what we were listening to. Anyway, back to you, Steve, and a great night.
Okay, well listen, thanks Don, and listen, thanks everybody. You know, we have Dan who's been very patient behind me. We want to thank him tonight. So we're going to wrap things up. Hopefully, Warren's going to talk a little bit about something that might be planned at a really nice spot in the tallest part of Elgin County, where CHLO had some towers over the years. But no, thanks very much. Everybody that had some recollections, contributed. Let's keep it alive. You know, this is a great part of our history. And I think, you know, for me, and I'm going to close with this, is that it's amazing. It blows me away, the contribution that St. Thomas has had, whether it's individuals from St. Thomas or people that have passed through this city that have had to the radio history of this country. And it is something that is really quite remarkable. And there's all kinds of individuals here tonight, you know, whether it's the Moore family or others that we've talked about, that have really changed radio in Canada. And you know what? We can all be proud that St. Thomas has been part of that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Warren. Warren's going to close her down. Safe trip home. Don't drink and drive. I'm walking, and you too.
Thank you very much, Steve. I'm just going to make this very, very short. I believe Steve is talking about trying to get something together at Cadovan in the summertime. Something that is going to be a little bit special, so watch for that. I know that Steve was mentioning that. I come to you from the last few years of CHLO, started in around 1987-88, and the morning show was Ron St. Clair. The midday show was an incredible, nice gentleman by the name of Andy Moore, and we also... Yeah, and we also had Tom Daly did a talk show during the And I think they used to call it roughshod or something similar to that at that time. I do want to say thanks to people like Donna Woolley, who worked in the front office, who's back there at the bar. And her husband Ray, who took care of the station, made sure that if we did fall asleep on the floor, we didn't have stuff on our back when we got up off the floor. Also, Rob Mitchell, former production manager and on air.
I think Rob wanted to
Rob,
say something.
yeah, okay,
Come on,
quick,
Rob.
before we get things rolling here.
No, he did. He wanted to say something.
And I don't know if there's anybody else. Did I miss anybody else from our
Sorry,
days?
Rob.
Oh, that's all right. Hi, everyone. Rob Mitchell. I was at CHLO from 1982 to 2004. I was the one that shut the CHLO down and we flipped over to the Hawk. But it was still St. Thomas and Steve. So anyway, our first song in the Hawk was Rock and Roll and I Like It by the Stones. That kicked off at 6 a.m. Now, one of the reasons I got into radio, I started my radio career in 1977 at a radio station in Brampton called CHIC. And I did know Dave Marsden. He was one of my mentors at that time. But when
Did you know he worked for CHLO?
Yes, I did.
You did, eh? Okay.
And he would never talk about the Dave Mickey years. So anyway, the reason I got into radio, when I was a kid, much like Steve, I would listen to radio all the time. One of the stations in Toronto that I listened to was CHLO, which came in clear as a bell. And then there was Chum. So I used to listen to the Steele show quite a bit as well. And that's why I got into the business. So anyway, it's great to be here tonight. And I appreciate you putting this on. I'll get back to you with some nuggets that I have at home.
Sweet.
All right. The one thing that I really regret was about 1984, when I started to get into programming, get off the air, we had a huge archive of the old jingles. And all of the, like J. Robert Wood, the Steele jingles, they were all the originals. And one of the program directors at the time actually dumped everything into the garbage, like all of the records.
They'll be still buried in the landfill site. They're probably preserved.
Plug the cave and see what he can do.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's great to be here tonight, folks. And
All right.
Looking forward to the next one.
Right on.
Thanks very much, Rob Mitchell. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for being here tonight, and give a nice big round of applause for Dan Walsh here. He's been very patient, and let's have him.
Yeah,
Thank
let's
you,
do
Dan.
the entertainment.
You're the guy that gave me no problem.